there. Welcome back to This is Therapy 20 Minutes in the Mind of a Nigerian. As always, I'm so glad that you're here. Please don't forget that this is a safe space for honest conversations about our inner lives, the thoughts we carry, the emotions we manage, and the pressures that we often don't talk about. Every episode is an opportunity for you to pause, slow down, reflect, and gently explore what's happening beneath the surface of your life as a Nigerian. Please don't forget that this is not advice, this is not a diagnosis, and it's absolutely not about having everything figured out. It's just awareness and context so that we can make the space that you're in feel safe. And today we're going to be talking about a particularly interesting topic that I think cuts across the lives of every single Nigerian. Kudi, ego, or money, and the responsibility that comes with it. If you are not a Nepo baby, if you're not Nigerian, Nepo baby is what we say in English, the haves, and then as they call it on Twitter, the Lapo babies are the have-nots, right? And so if you're a regular day-to-day individual, you probably have financial responsibility on your shoulder. Whether it's that family member that is expecting a cut from your salary, whether it's that annoying person at work that feels your money is somehow their money and they're joining you to buy lunch or urgent 2K, as the case may be. There's school fees, there's house rent, there are all these responsibilities that people essentially have to face on a daily basis. And a lot of times that comes with a psychological pressure, even for the people that are only taking care of themselves. I promise you, the economy right now is giving everybody a bashing. And so, between the cultural, family, and survival pressure, you just kind of feel stuck when it comes to your finances. And this obviously becomes emotionally exhausting after a while. And if it's a continuous pressure, then before you know what's happening, you feel overwhelmed and you're feeling exhausted all the time. And you know that it's not because you're physically tired. But before we get right into the main gist of the topic, we have to answer the question, why is it that financial responsibility feels so different in Nigeria? Of course, I already mentioned it. Our economy is a wonder to souls. I promised that I had told myself I was going to stop doing this thing where they tell me the price of something and then I proceed to be like, oh, but just 2 years ago, or when I got back, it was this amount. And it's so difficult because you hear them saying that a crate of eggs is now 7,500, 6,000, depending on the size of the eggs. And I'm like, when I got back to Nigeria, it was 1,900 or something along those lines. And then somebody else is going to chip in and be like, oh, it was even 700 in my time or something like that. And you're just like, wow, how are we ending up here? So, on the one hand, you're dealing with the crazy economic situation. And then you have to add in the factor that in Nigeria, success is collective. When one person rises, everybody is supposed to rise with them. There's a subtle or very loud, in some cases, expectation that as you rise up the ranks, you are going to raise people along with yourself. And it's really not a bad idea. Really, it is something that most of us would really want to do. But the truth of the matter is that life looks a lot different than what we want. And so you find that your salary now becomes a beacon of hope, not just for you, but for yourself. And so now you're paying, maybe if your family needs the assistance, you're paying rent for somebody, you're paying school fees. In cases of emergencies, they're reaching out to you. You're sending money to siblings, to cousins, to aunties, to uncles. And then in the midst of all of that, let's say you've even planned all of it into your day, suddenly there's that random person that comes to you and they're like, oh, this happened. Can you please help me with this amount of money? The worst part is they'll say, oh, can you please lend me the money? And then before you know what's happening, you're chasing them for money that is yours and they are making you look like you are the problem in the situation. And in the midst of all of this, before you know what's happening, you're burdened emotionally. So not only is your pocket feeling the weight, but then you're beginning to feel the weight of guilt because you can't possibly give everybody what they want. And so you're having to say no. You're having to say, oh, I can't help out. And you feel bad about it. Then you're feeling anxious because as much as you want to help everybody and you're guilty or feeling guilty for not helping them, you're conscious of the fact that I also need to have something saved in my emergency fund, or I really want to get this thing for myself. I want to be able to pay for it. That what if I'm going to need money and I cannot provide for myself because I've spread myself out so thin for so many other people? And this is another thing that we rarely talk about, or the third thing, which is one that we rarely talk about, which is resentment. When you think about it and we say, oh, people in Nigeria are angry all the time. Yes, the weather is hot. Yes, if you live in Lagos, there's a lot of traffic. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of people are actually resentful. They're angry. They're upset. They're frustrated because, well, you really want to do more, but you can't do that more, and you feel even worse because now you're feeling guilty that you can't help, and then you're upset that people are upset with you that you can't help, but there's really nothing you can do about it. And it just becomes this vicious cycle where you're constantly feeling guilty, then angry, then anxious, and then you rinse and repeat. And so for many people, when their salary comes in at the end of the month, it doesn't really feel like anything changed. Yes, it offers you relief for maybe the first 2, 3 days, but before you know what's happening, you're catching up on a whole long list of payments and bills and this and that. And at the end of the day, there's really no joy that comes from the money that you're making. Compound it even further by thinking about the people who moved to Lagos to work and to hustle, and then the ends are just not meeting, and then family back home is calling, not understanding what it is that you're dealing with and expecting you to keep supporting them. And so there's so much pressure. Added to that is the fact that you can't come out and look like what you're going through. So you're having to look a particular way. I was having a conversation recently and we're just talking about cars in Lagos, and it was like an eye opener, quote and unquote, for me because I was looking at it and I'm like, oh, wait, actually, when you look at the kinds of cars that people drive in Lagos, they are more the modern cars. You're seeing so many Mercedes Benzes on the road. You're seeing Range Rovers, you're seeing exotic cars, this and that and that and that. And in the midst of all of this, there's you who is supposed to be in a good job, making a good salary, and you can't explain the fact that even though you quote and unquote have a good salary, you don't really have a good salary. And so people have to consistently package. Being in a city like Lagos, nobody wants to look like what they're going through. And so you're forced to put up this face even when you are really struggling. And for many people, there's also the added fact that them bearing the responsibility successfully turns them in or gives them a sense of identity. This is especially true for African Nigerian men because um, whether we like it or not, and this will probably be another conversation for another episode, there's that teeny weeny savior complex. And so you feel good when you're the helper, when you're the one that people come to for, and they come to for help. And it almost feels like it is ingrained in your identity that that is who I am. I'm the person in my family who has made the most progress in the scale of life. And so it is my duty and my responsibility to provide for them. And so at no point can you say, oh no, I'm stretched thin. I can't do this for you. I can't do that for you because, well, one, it takes away from who you are as a person. And then two, it makes you look less than, or it makes you seem like you're either not a good person or you're struggling, or all these different ways that consciously or unconsciously you're made to feel a particular way just because of the finances or the lack thereof. And I imagine especially what it would be like for people who are in, say, government jobs or blue collar jobs, people who are making minimum wage. Imagine, to add to this whole complexity, your salary is being withheld, because many times this is something that people experience. They aren't paid for months. Even in the private sector, maybe the owner of the business isn't able to keep up with payments. And so now you're consistently having to keep doing what you're doing when the amount of money that you think is even too small is not even available. And it's just a crazy cycle that so many people find themselves in. And this is one of the main impacts on mental health of Nigerians, which of course leads me to things where you hear, oh, come for therapy, and someone is like, oh, if I had the money to pay for therapy, I wouldn't need the therapy, because we really do believe that money is our problem. And in some cases, it is. But like I talked about the savior complex earlier, it's deeper than just having the money. Because at the end of the day, even if you did get all the money that you needed or wanted, you're going to now have a new set of problems, right? And so we have to look beyond just the presence or absence of finances, while also taking into cognizance the impact that the financial strain has on a person's emotional well being and state of being. So let's be clear. I am in no wise saying that it is bad to help people, or that it's a problem, or that you should not help people, or that you should be selfish. Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is that for many people, the pressure is unsustainable. The expectation is unrealistic. And the result of it is often catastrophic. I know I sound like all those Paspire to Maguire people, but forgive me. The truth of the matter is that it's not possible to always be there for everybody all the time. And because as Nigerians, we struggle with boundaries, we struggle with saying no. It's almost like a taboo for you to say no. You're not able to keep yourself afloat. You're not able to give to the capacity that you can. And so you're giving and giving and giving to the point where you don't even have anything. I remember seeing a video somewhere where a man had died, and so I think it was his friend that was telling the family members that the reason he's here is because he was always working for you people, right? Remember, I talked about people traveling to Lagos. Some people, they travel abroad and then they are working themselves out to be able to send something home. And in the process of doing that, some of them wear themselves out and their bodies give way because, well, you're still a human being. And so, us having this conversation is not to support greed, is not to support wickedness, but it is saying you have to have boundaries, and it does not make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means that you're acknowledging the fact that you're a human being, you have limits, and you acknowledge this fact. Because, truth be told, you constantly doing everything for everybody and feeling like you have not an option actually shows a weakness in your ability to take care of yourself. And it's not a badge of honor. So, how can you actually protect your mental health? What are the things that you can do to ensure that you have a healthy balance of caring for yourself and caring for other people? The first thing is to be honest about your capacity and be honest about the fact that you have a capacity. And it's okay for you to first acknowledge that with yourself. You have to be able to tell yourself that, yes, I have a limit. I remember seeing a video, I see a lot of videos. I remember seeing a video and this man was talking. I didn't listen to the whole thing, so it was pretty much just a clip. So I can't really speak to the rationale behind what he was saying and really say whether I agree with it or not. But he talked about the fact that you being able to be the best version of yourself for people is seeing people going through difficult times sometimes and just not helping, not because you don't want to, but because for you to be able to pull other people out, you have to pull yourself out first. Again, it was just a clip I watched, so I don't really know if it's a position that I subscribe to, but I think it's safe to say that conversations around this subject are becoming more frequent and it's important. So, like I said, be honest about the fact that you're a human being, you have your limits, your pocket has limits, right? And it's okay for you to acknowledge that fact. Yes, I know that Nigerians, we like to be hopeful, we like to live in the future, we like to be ambitious and, look forward to all that is in store for us. But sometimes you have to be honest with yourself about where you are right now, and especially when it comes to helping people and also even living your own life. There are so many videos about financial wisdom, planning, living below your means. So I'm not going to dwell on all of that. The second point is you have to release yourself from the guilt of boundaries and setting of boundaries. The fact that you're saying no does not make you a bad person, does not make you a wicked person, and certainly does not imply that you are rejecting the people around you. However, you have to understand that even love has to say no at some point. And so you definitely want to ensure that you are allowing yourself. You will obviously have to sit in the discomfort first and accept the fact that, yes, you're going to feel like a terrible person for a bit, but as you keep on doing it, knowing that you're doing it from a place of love and a place of wanting to stay alive, you're going to eventually get comfortable with saying no and accepting that this is the limit or this is what I can do. The next thing that you want to do is ensure that you are objective when it comes to finances. So you don't want to be doing things based off of sentiments. And I was watching a video version of the Psychology of Money book, and one of the, I think it's laws, I'm not sure, one of the principles of the book speaks to the fact that we often think we're objective when it comes to money, but in reality, we actually are not. And so you would have to sit with yourself and really, really look at it and say, okay, me doing XYZ, doing this, doing that, am I doing it because I'm making an objective financial decision, or is it because I'm making an emotional one? And this cuts across whether it's your spending on yourself, whether it's spending on other people, or your acts of compassion. You really need to sit down and look at your financial habits from an objective point of view. And then also the last thing you want to do is check in with yourself before you give. Ask yourself, am I doing this from a place of compassion, or is it from fear or guilt, or just that not wanting them to say I didn't do? And if that's the case, you definitely don't want to do it. Again, not because you're a bad person, but your motive is also equally important, right? And so, as we bring this episode to a close, the burden of finances is really pinching on almost every Nigerian at this point in time. And if you're being honest with yourself and if you really look at your current situation, you might actually be able to attribute a lot of your emotional disstability or instability to something related to your finances, whether it's the weight of your bills, whether it is the weight of expectation from people around, whether it is the weight of perceived pressure to fit in a particular social class or whatever the case may be. And whatever it is that it is for you, you're definitely going to need to look in, introspect, and really understand what it is that you're doing. And then after you've done that, find a plan that works for you. I hope this was helpful. I'm so thankful that you spent these 20 minutes with me. If this episode resonated with you, you definitely want to take a moment to sit with it. Explore the possibility that the reason why you're angry all the time, or you're anxious, or you're sad, or you feel depressed might actually be linked to your finances. You don't need to rush the process. Take some time. You can also write to us anonymously. Tell us what stood out for you in this episode, how you're feeling, your experience. And better still, you can sign up for therapy using the link somewhere in the description of this episode, or wherever information about the episode is. Until the next one, take care of yourself and evaluate things objectively. Have a good one.